this Showtime pay-per-view, Circustime PPV, or Short Notice Time pay-per-view? Hello, fight fans. This is Coach Nathan from NS Champ 7 Power Boxing Series at nschamp7.com. Back at you again, and that's the title of my analysis of the on-again, off-again matchup between Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul, and now recently announced replacement opponent Hassim Rachman Jr., who is the son of former world heavyweight champ Hassim Rachman Sr. First off, when a guy talks trash so much, as a matter of fact, the whole fighting family does, and I'm talking about the Furies, it's hard to take them seriously when they pulled out twice of this fight, and especially since he previously fought in the U.S. And for this fight, Tommy Fury was scheduled to get a guaranteed $2 million. So, and there's more to come because that's before the pay-per-view receipts. But if this fight was to go down, my edge was going to go to Jake Paul. And hey, folks, I'm not a Jake Paul fan by any means, but he was supremely confident going into what was supposed to be his toughest test to date against a supposedly real boxer. And you got to give credit to any man who listens to his trainers and who's willing to spend months in training camp and put in that work. Because if you're not willing to put in that work, you'll never be a champion in any sport, especially professional boxing. However, he is not a great fighter by any means. At best, he's a confident, well conditioned fighter with a good right hand who probably wouldn't be ranked in the top 15 of his rightful division, which is cruiserweight, because he's never fought a cruiserweight. Paul often mentions other fighters who fought inferior opponents in their six pro fights, such as Tank Davis, Floyd Mayweather, and Canelo Alvarez. Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather were national champions in the amateurs, where you had to fight the best guys from across the country in your weight class anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. And that's after you got out of your region or your city. Now I'm talking about places like Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, New York City, Miami, Dallas, Los Angeles. And once again, this was in your weight class. Nobody had a 15 to 20 pound weight advantage. Nobody fought on short notice, so everybody was in shape. And you weren't taller than everyone you fought either. So by the time these guys got to their six pro fight, they were used to different styles and had fought around the world. Now, a lot of people say, okay, yeah, but they're fighting inferior competition, so it's to pad their records. Yeah, that is true, but it's also to get these guys used to the rigors and rules of professional prize fighting. No headgear, fighting in lighter gloves, and the rounds you boxed are longer. So, oh, another thing, none of these guys in their six pro fight was the headliner of a main event of a fight card on pay per view. And in the case of Canelo Alvarez, he turned pro somewhere around 15 or 16, so he was a teenager by his six pro fight. So, like I said, Paul is not a great fighter, but what he is great at is picking the right opponents at the right time. And he's a walking, talking hype machine that can make an 8 round exhibition match at 2 minutes per round appear as colossal as a 15 round world heavyweight title fight on pay per view back in the day. Which brings us to Tommy Fury. If you watched a lot of his brother, Tyson Fury, I challenge you, and you watch Tommy, I challenge you to mute the sound, watch both fighters, and you tell me what attributes, and I'm talking about skill set and ring characteristics, remind you that Tommy is related to Tyson. Tommy doesn't do anything exceptionally well. He has decent speed, he does punch in combination, but he doesn't have devastating punching power, doesn't stick and move like his brother, and he hasn't shown the chin resiliency of his brother because he's never fought a puncher, so his chin's never been tested. Also, he looks easy to hit because he drops his hands before, during, and after he punches. But with all that said, the fight between him and Jake Paul will still probably happen somewhere down the line if both continue to win. Because these guys are somewhat right for each other because they're similar records and the rawness of their skill set. Remember also, folks, uh, Tyron Woodley staggered Jake Paul in their first fight when he had 8 weeks of training camp to prepare. And we all saw what happened to him in the second fight with only 1 week to prepare. 1 week of preparation, that's not long enough to win any fight, amateur or pro, or even novice. Another thing about Tommy Fury, he's young enough to improve if he's willing, and one could easily question that because he's already a reality TV star in the UK and comes from a famous fighting family. Now, concerning Hassim Rachman Jr., he's coming off a knockout loss from the hands of undefeated heavyweight prospect Mackenzie Morrison, who was the son of former WBO heavyweight champ Tommy Morrison. One could argue that Mackenzie should be the one fighting Jake Paul, but to do that, Paul would have to do the same thing his opponents did. And I'm talking about Ben Askren, Nate Robinson, and Tyron Woodley. And that's give up 3 to 4 inches in height and at least 20 pounds, 20 pounds in weight, which he knows that's something that he would never do. In his sparring sessions as well as his fights, Routman looks flat-footed, drops his hands a lot, but because of his size, he does have a puncher's chance in this fight, unless he has to make a catch weight with only 4 weeks to prepare. So all of that goes back to my original question. Is this going to be Showtime pay-per-view, Circus Time pay-per-view, or short notice time pay-per-view? Hey folks, I welcome your comments on this one. But don't forget, for elite boxing instruction, elite boxing analysis, and elite boxing philosophy, check me out and subscribe to NSChamp7.com.